Okay, guys, I am here to show you an amazing southern dish that is going to literally knock your socks off. You're going to be amazed at not only the flavor of this dish, but I'm going to show you just how easy it can be made at home. So I'm starting with some water in a pot and I'm going to get ready to cook my shrimp, and I'm adding 2 tablespoons of Tony Sasseries. Again, if you know, you know, this is Louisiana Cajun seasoning. And that seasoning is going to go straight into the water, and I'm bringing that water to a boil. And here I'm just chopping up, or cutting up rather, 1 lemon into wedges, and I'm squeezing that juice into that boiling water, and then I'm dropping the whole lemon inside of it. Here it is, so you can see exactly what's happening. And then after that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of onion powder straight into that water and that seasoning. And then, of course, 1 tablespoon of crab oil. What we are doing is building layers of flavor in that water for the shrimp, and I am immediately going to pour all of my shrimp into this mixture and bring it back up to a boil. And then as soon as it comes to a boil, I am going to turn off the heat and remove my pot from the heat and put a lid on it and let the shrimp sit there in those juices, in that seasoning and water for 5 minutes. And I'm going to set a timer for that. One mistake that I see a lot of people make when it comes to cooking shrimp is overcooking it. So that's why we set a timer. We're going to let it soak in all that flavor for 5 minutes, and then we're going to rinse and drain it. Now I'm moving on to my next step, which is my sausage, my andouille Cajun sausage. And I'm going to slice it thinly. Here you can see how thin I'm going to slice it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that sliced on my cutting board, and we are going to get ready to saute this in a skillet. Now, because this sausage has a decent amount of fat content, I'm not going to add any fat to the skillet. I don't need it. But if you notice that your sausage is not rendering down enough fat and it seems like it might even burn a little on you, you can always add a little bit of butter to that skillet, or you can add avocado oil or olive oil, but I've never really needed to do that. So now I am taking that shrimp that has been soaking in all that flavor. I'm going to take it to the sink and pour it into a strainer. It is a little bit sad to watch all of that delicious flavor go down the drain, but we don't need that water anymore. It's done its job. And I'm going to take those lemon wedges out of the shrimp and set that to the side and let it wait while I move on to the next step. Speaking of the next step, it is to get my eyes back on that sausage. And I have that heat kind of up a little bit high. I should have turned it down just a touch. You can tell that sausage is definitely getting some brown color on it very quickly. Actually, borderline, a few pieces burnt, but honestly, that just is building layers of flavor. So as long as I'm standing there and constantly stirring it, I'm not worried. And I didn't have anything else to do. So that's exactly what I did. Once the sausage has some good color, it's starting to get golden and brown around the edges, I take it all out, put it on a plate, and then I'm going to pour the seasoning blend into the skillet. And I again don't need any extra fat or oil because the fat from the sausage is sufficient to cook my vegetables in. But if you did need some and you wanted to add extra flavor, some bacon grease or bacon drippings would be amazing. And I actually have some in the fridge and didn't think about it. But I'm just going to saute these veggies, these frozen veggies, until they're kind of translucent. It doesn't take long, and then this part of the process will be done. Of course, this is just a little bit of a shortcut from the store. You can definitely cut up your own onion, bell pepper, celery, whatever's in the seasoning blend. You could do that fresh, no big deal, okay? I added back in my sausage just to get that all mixed in. And this is the point where you're going to add the Worcestershire sauce, but you're not going to see me do that here, but it is definitely in the recipe. It's reflected there, so no worries. And now I'm going to move on to the main star of this dish, the grits. So we're going to take some vegetable broth, 2 boxes of vegetable broth to be exact, and we're going to pour it into a large boiling pot. If you'll notice, this is the same boiling pot I used to do my shrimp. I'm not trying to add any extra dishes, so we're just going to reuse. The flavors are there anyway. You could definitely use chicken broth if you wanted to. I use vegetable broth because that was the recipe I was given, but again, make it your own. And then we're going to grate some cheese. Now, I know you might say there's prepackaged cheese that's already grated, but if you've never grated your own cheese, there is a huge difference in the texture and in the flavor of freshly grated cheese, because in order to keep cheese that's already been grated in the fridge section and to keep it fresh and not clump together, they have to add ingredients to it like flour, cornstarch, things like that. And it does alter the flavor. So there's the broth, it's boiling, and I'm just cooking these grits according to the package directions. And when you're cooking your grits, this is a step where you do want to be present. So once I get all of my grits in there, I'm going to give it a good stir, pop a lid on it. But I am going to check in quite frequently on these grits, and I'm going to stir them. What I'm doing is, number one, I'm making sure that they're not sticking to the bottom of the pot and burning. Number two, I'm checking the consistency constantly. And I actually want to cook my grits until they're pretty thick, because we're going to be adding some half and half at the end, and that's going to thin them back out. And so I need them to already be thick. So while the grits are cooking, I simply poured my shrimp into that sausage and vegetable mixture. And like I said, you're going to see me check in on those grits multiple times. I think the box direction says to cook it for about 20 minutes. So I am going over there probably every 4 minutes just to check. And then I decided I wanted to grab my whisk and really whisk in those grits with that broth. I did not want any lumps and to make them really creamy, and that helped quite a bit. By the way, I don't have the time at this moment to tell you where this recipe came from, but it's a beautiful story, and I'm just showing you the consistency of the grits at this moment. But I want you to head on over to the blog, and I want you to read about it. So when the grits get to the consistency that you want, or about there, I think I was going to cook them for 4 minutes longer, I added half a stick of butter. And then when they are the consistency that I'm happy with, I'm going to remove them from the heat, and I'm going to put that cheese in there and stir it in. But anyway, if you want to know where this recipe came from, I would really, really, really appreciate you checking out the blog and reading about it. It's very sweet. So I'm going to add in that Colby Jack cheddar cheese. Give that a really good stir. I am letting those grits melt that butter, melt that cheese. It's going to be super creamy. And this is also the point where I was like, oh, well, I think I will go ahead and pour my grits into my skillet. And they would not fit. This is a substantial dish. It makes like 15 to 16 servings, and the serving size is a cup. But I was determined to try to make it fit into this cast iron skillet for pictures. I wanted to take some beautiful pictures. I don't even have the half and half in here yet, and it's already overflowing, and all of the grits are not in here. So let me just say this, because you're not going to see this on the camera. I transferred that back into the big pot, and then I added the half and half, and it all fit perfectly after I photographed it. But I had to taste it for you. It is amazing. It's delicious. This recipe is easy to make. You have to make it, guys. You have to.